By now, most of you have either heard or read the headline, Bin Laden is dead. Our military and our intelligence agencies have tracked down, found Bin Laden, and he is now history. Several thoughts come to mind. First three that are on the positive side. Number one, to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11, I hope this provides you some level of closure and closes a horrible chapter in our nation's history. And while our loved ones can never be brought back, at least it might allow us to move forward a bit. Secondly, to our military, I hope this provides you with a sense of accomplishment, some motivation for a job well done, and our thoughts and prayers go out to you as well as a heartfelt thanks. And thirdly, from a defense policy statement, I hope that those people around the world who would consider doing terrorist acts, especially against innocent civilians, know this, that whether it takes a year, 10 years, or a lifetime, you will be brought to justice. There are some other thoughts that I have that really are more a moment for caution. One, when I first heard the news of the death of Bin Laden, my mind was flooded with a litany of imageries and memories from 10 years earlier on September 11, 2001. All of them were horrible, but one of the most disturbing to me is as I watched while the buildings were burning in New York and Washington, D.C., and the news was going over and over and over about what had happened on 9/11/2001, I saw terrorists and supporters of terrorism, not only in the Middle East on television, but a few even here in our own country that were literally dancing in the street and shouting, amongst other things, "Death to the USA." I flash forward to just the other day when the news of Bin Laden's death reached most Americans. I saw a few of my fellow Americans also dancing in the street, chanting USA. And while I do not blame them at all, and while I completely understand the emotions that they felt and were probably trying to release, just from an imagery standpoint, it was all too eerily close to those terrorists dancing in the street 10 years ago. And I would just mention a word of caution about how we celebrate, because to me, death, even the death of someone as evil and hideous and, in my opinion, cowardly as Bin Laden, death really is more for a moment of somber reflection than that of celebration, like we've just won the 7th game of the World Series or the Super Bowl. Just something to think about. Secondly, while we are happy to close a horrible book of history in our nation with Bin Laden, we would be naive to not be aware that there are others like Bin Laden who have been waiting and are now waiting to take his place. And thirdly, although this mission, the Bin Laden mission, is accomplished, the larger mission of keeping America safe from any threat will never be over. The men and women of our military realize that they must remain ever vigilant to keep us safe, and that we as individual citizens must remain ever aware that there will always be a threat. There always has been, there always will be. With that said, that brings up two final points. One, just because our military must remain ever vigilant, and their job is never done, and there's always going to be a threat out there, that fact must never be used as an excuse by those people who would propose policies of perpetual war for perpetual peace. Not only is that an oxymoron, it is absolutely the wrong military policy for our country. It is not what our country was founded on. It's not what our military is for. It's not what we're all about as Americans. And lastly, I think it's important that we also do not allow the events of 9/11 or the existing and ongoing threats that we still face today ever be used as an excuse by politicians who would use words such as terror or terrorism or safety or security as a means of working us into a fear where we would give up our freedoms in some false sense of security to maintain our safety. I'm reminded of the words of Benjamin Franklin over 200 years ago, who said, "Those who would give up liberty to ensure some sense of safety or security deserve neither." Those words are more true and more poignant today than they were when Benjamin Franklin spoke them. And lastly, although it is tragic that we lost about 3,000 people, 3,000 of our fellow citizens on 9/11, never forget that we have lost over 1,600,000 of our fellow citizens. Those are the men and women who have fought and died in all of America's wars to keep us safe, but more importantly, to ensure those very freedoms. And in the final analysis, we must never forget, we really can never be truly safe. But we can, and we must remain, truly free. These are a few of my thoughts. They're now some of your thoughts, and as always, we welcome your input.